What's up, guys? Welcome to the In the Blind podcast. Today we have Jerrod Niemann in the house hanging out with us. We're going to talk a little bit of music, songwriting, maybe a little mushrooms.
A little politics.
See where this thing goes. Yeah.
Let's roar.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've been friends for, 15, 18 years, I think?
Yeah.
You're one of the first people I think I met when I came to town. I think you'd already had music out, and I was just a big fan. And then so over the years, we've played tons of shows together. We were on Sony together, and been through a lot.
Yeah.
And become good friends. You're one of my favorite people on the planet, as I've told you before.
Well, likewise, and this is cool. Thanks for having me. Congratulations on your podcast. When he told me he was doing this podcast with you, I thought that was interesting because he's, Eric's kind of an observer in places. He speaks when he has something to say, but he can't.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, get to hear you open up a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, he probably his words are probably a little more thought out than mine. I tend to fire from the hip, so I may say some stupid shit from time to time, but
I think that's what makes us a good team.
Might be a little entertaining, might be a little funny, maybe a little offensive, but it'll always be honest. I can promise you that. That's one thing
That's all we can ask for.
I don't cut the corners on, so we tell the truth around here. That's part of the reason. Well, there's a little bit of a double entendre with the In the Blind podcast because we're obviously in Riley Green's Duck Blind. We're filming In the Blind, but we'd hope to bring some people out of the blind as well because there's a lot of people that are stuck with their heads in the sand in this country right now, and it's pretty wild to see.
That's true. For sure. Well, I'd like to start say congratulations on the Edwin McCain record that you produced. I'm a huge Edwin McCain fan. Actually, the guy I moved to Nashville with. The guy by name, his name is Jamie Morgan. His father was the CEO of Krispy Kreme Donuts, and
Nice.
I guess he was friends with either Edwin's dad, and Jamie had introduced me to Edwin McCain back in the day, and I grew up huge fan of his. And so when I saw that you were working with him, I was like, gosh, I hope I can meet him at some point again when I'm later on in the career and stuff. But
and he's just so nice and cool, very intelligent, very, very thoughtful, and just extremely talented. And it was really fun to work with him because he writes such cool songs. He just hears stuff differently, different progressions and stuff. So it was really, really fun. So
how did all that come about?
Well, so Lee Brice and him are buddies, and they had done a song together on I think Lee's album, and they always talked about Edwin hasn't done a record in 15 years.
Right.
So they had decided to do a record together, and since I produced Lee's album, we just kind of hit this cool groove where we kind of it's nice to have that extra mind to a set of ears. And he just said, hey, I talked to Edwin and I was just wondering if you'd want to be a part of this project too. And I was like, oh man, of course.
That's incredible.
So yeah, there's a favorite song on there is called When It Does, and Tom Douglas here in town wrote it, and man, it's really special. And I hope something like that does good for him because he's just too good not to be appreciated.
Still sings as good as he ever has.
Sounds great.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah, he's good. He played the acoustic, sang on harmonies.
Yeah. Nice. Do you have any new music coming out anytime soon?
Yeah, well, so on Lee's album, Jamie Johnson and Lee, obviously Randy Houser, Rob Hatch, and Dallas Davidson. We had an office together around the turn of the century many years ago.
Didn't y'all live together at one point too? Or?
Rob was my roommate and Dallas was, but this was like an office building at the United Artists Tower, that octagon building that used to be where it caught fire. And we had a little office in there. And when we went in to sign the lease, the guy's like, what's the name of your business? And we said, we don't have a business. He's like, well, this is an office building. You have to have a business. And Jamie said, trailer park. So the next day we went in, and on the legend where it tells all the businesses, it said 505 Trailer Park, but he spelled it Trailer. So we just started saying we were the trailer park. So we never recorded any music. So Lee asked us all just to sing on the song.
That's really
and
awesome.
We're actually we're working on right now to finish his album. So it's fun to finally get to do a tune with all those guys.
Y'all doing all that at Lee's studio?
Yeah. Have you been out to Lee's?
I haven't. No. You showed me pictures and stuff.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great studio. The last 3 years I've spent more time there than at my house.
You still got your studio?
Yeah.
At your place?
Yeah. I mean, but his is like a full blown tracking studio.
He's got a console and everything.
Yeah, mine's just be more like an overdub setup.
Yeah, that's how mine is.
Yeah, which is all you need.
Right.
And a couple years after we wrote it, me and Steven are going to release For the Hell of It.
Nice.
I think at the end of March or beginning of April. So
man, that's awesome.
It's one of my favorite songs that we did. It's different. It's cool.
Yeah. Even the work tape that day sounded good, and then what you did on the piano and stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Steven sent me the new mix.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I think awesome. I got a few more guitar overdubs and stuff to do to kind of glue it all together, but
yeah, can't wait to hear.
Try to release 2 or 3 every few months for the rest of the year. See what happens.
Hell yeah.
It's awesome. I did have one question. I'm just curious, being in the business for 20 plus years, like, what's your opinion right now, kind of of the state of the music business, especially country format? I think things have changed a lot.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting because, where you grow up, especially if you're in like a small town, you have a little radio station, and what your parents listen to, and just kind of what you're around, and that kind of used to shape everybody. Very regional,
right?
People's tastes and their style, and but now with everything being just a touch of a button, I think everybody just has so many more influences. Mm-hmm. Unless someone's intentionally wanting it to sound one particular genre and that's it, and that's just kind of who they are. I think we're just going to continue to see a lot more influences, blur the lines. But what's interesting to me is like Zach Bryan and those guys, like, have had so much success in the streaming world, and you listen to it and it, the guitar's a little out of tune, and it's just real raw, and it's interesting to see everybody gravitating towards that.
Right.
And it's usually like, I feel like when our country's in a good spot, people listen to more of the music, and when everybody's kind of depressed, they listen more to the lyrics. And I feel like people are reacting to real raw sounding stuff right now,
it's
which
authentic.
is cool.
I think for me as a fan, that's the stuff I gravitate towards too. Is like, if it feels authentic, it sounds authentic. That I think that's what people are looking for, man. Like, people are so used to like getting a show, or like the full facade, that when they do get somebody that's just ripped down and raw, like, I think Zach Bryan wrote all those songs on that first album, like, while he was in the freaking military by himself, which is also pretty crazy. Yeah. But it also gives it like a really, really authentic feel, like, and even with the, with stuff being out of tune sometimes, and it's not perfect, I think, we get into a habit here in Nashville making everything perfect.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not the best way.
I think we have the tools to make it perfect, and I think what I love about old school records is everybody's playing live. The authenticity was embraced, and the mistakes were embraced, and it was cool. If it happened, it happened. I mean, sure, you can go back and splice and rewind the reel and do all that stuff, but I mean, even in Zach Bryan's case, it's like anyone and everyone can make a record in their bedroom now with a laptop and a little interface, and maybe they're not the best guitar player, maybe they're not the best singer, but it is raw, it's authentic, and it's real. And I think people are kind of sick of the perfect, polished sounding records.
Well, it's probably against our nature, because we're flawed, and it's like when you see someone that's hurt or crying, you instantly get concerned to try to make them feel better. And when something's perfect, it's just so unrealistic. And there's some styles of music that like, if you're going to watch a DJ or something, that's kind of the, everything needs to be lined up.
It has to be perfect, yeah.
But just for, other worlds, and it is weird, when you're editing vocals, if something's out of tune and you're like, oh, I'm going to try to make that sound like it's in tune, and you visually pull it up and then it sounds out of tune, it's because it's like inside of a pitch, there's so many more pitches.
Yeah.
We only use 12, but there's, probably at least 48.
Like semitones within semitones.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really cool. Like Edwin uses a lot of blues notes when he sings.
Yeah.
And that took a little bit to get used to.
Yeah. Looks different.
He's got a very unique sound too. I mean,
yeah, he's got a lot of soul, a lot more than me. So,
well, you're a pretty soulful guy, so it means something when you say that about someone.
Absolutely.
super bluesy and soulful. So.
Yeah. So, hell, I don't know, but I'm glad, it's cycled back around to real.
Well, I think you were one of the first people to kind of incorporate, like, to cross over with the electronic, stuff, like the stuff that a DJ could actually play. Like, you can drink to that all night. That's one of, I remember, like, when it came out, and I was like, freaking country song. I don't have to, like, reproduce to be able to mix. Like, this is awesome. Like, and now there's a lot more of that stuff. But, dude, you were way ahead of your time. I think, was that 2014 when you released that? Or
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy, thinking that it was 11 years ago, and you were already on the forefront of that, especially as big as it's become, and as much as there's a crossover with those genres now. I think it's says a lot. You were way ahead of the game there.
Well, thank you. Well, I'll say, like, before I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to, major labels and stuff like that, I woke up one day, I'd put on, like, I don't know, 60 pounds or something, and I was just waiting for someone to give me a chance. And I just woke up one morning and I was like, no one's going to help you. You got to do it yourself. That's the point. So I started getting in shape, and I went to our buddy Dave Brainerd. He had a little studio. If you split this room in half, one would be like where you could sing and play, and the other would be like where his, all his instruments and his setup,
Yeah. Was that the one over by the roundabout?
Yeah, above a shoe store. So I just went to him on a handshake deal and said, man, I don't have any money, but if you help me do this, I'll just give you whatever you want. I mean, whatever's fair. So for a year and a half, when he finally had time off, which was usually like at 10 p.m., we'd all be in the tin roof having a good time, and we'd just bring everybody over to the studio at 10, and we'd just record from like 10 to 3. And so not having many tools besides just Dave and myself, you got to figure out how to get stuff done, so it kind of makes you create.
Yeah.
And it was just one of the really cool, one of my favorite experiences here in Nashville, because you got to kind of do what you want. We had so many characters in there, so many personalities, that we would send people in and just have them just say random crap in the mic. And so I said, man, we should use some of that. So like when Dr. Dre and Warren G and Snoop would use those interstitials, little skits between songs, we just started like comping people's stuff together and just created these, just being dumb. And so when Sony got it, Gary Overton had kind of got a new job over there when Joe Galante left, and he said, yeah, I put your album in, and I heard like a movie trailer, so I ejected it, and I was like, okay. And
that's awesome.
But it's like there's like a, the old movie theme, In a World,
Yeah.
This buddy of ours did it at every party, and he would be like, in a world where Tiffany is king, and he would just say all this crazy. It was hilarious. So we had him come in and just ramble off, and we comped it together where he says that he's 4 years old, and he just went boom boom in his pants. It just and there's no reason to put all that dumb stuff on there, but it was just so random.
I remember when I heard it, because we had just signed Sony at that point, or I guess Joe Galante signed us and then retired or moved on immediately, and then Gary Overton had signed us at EMI. And I remember, we were just trying to get him to put a song out for us. And I remember, I think it was Jim Catino played me that record, and I listened to it, and I was like, I felt like it kind of took me on a journey from the beginning to the end, and nobody had done that I had heard, besides maybe in the hip hop game. But I thought it was really cool that you did that.
Oh, and thank you. It was fun.
You're trendsetter, I would say.
Well, I wanted to continue to do that, but that's kind of when streaming started coming around, right. And people were saying that in a playlist, one of those skits would come on, like there'd be at a pool party, and all of a sudden you hear, that ain't country music, you dunce, and then it goes to somebody else's song.
Right.
So I thought, well, it kind of defeats maybe the purpose. So, I don't know, one flaw, or it could be, I don't know, it's positive or negative, but a lot of people in town look for hit songs, and they think, well, radio, they'll play this, and the country fan base hopefully will dig it. What I do is just try to challenge myself, and I really didn't think about, obviously I want everybody to appreciate it, hopefully, but I was just thinking about like just trying to grow as an artist, and I never
Just making a cool song.
Just trying to do that and hope that, it worked. And so the first album did. So the next album, I wanted to do a horn album. And so we go in and, I'd hum all these parts at home and make harmonies and kind of show them to the horn guys. And we used a acoustic. We had a B-bender put into an acoustic guitar. It like ruined the first two.
Right.
And we finally found a Washburn that was built differently that could withstand the operation. So we just had these really different elements on there. And when the label came in to hear it, one of the head honchos leaned over and said, your VP of promotion, her biggest pet peeve is horns. So she already was not a fan of the album, but horns have been in country music since back in the Western swing,
And horns are amazing too if used the right way. I mean, it adds so many layers to the track. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like Zach Bryan's show, is because he has so many instruments on stage, and sometimes it just looks like it turns into a big jam, which is fun, like kind of like maybe what you guys started out doing,
sure.
And actually having fun, that's really cool, so that's weird. She didn't like horns to me, but I'm old fashioned, so
Well, as you know, the label's always looking for an excuse not to have to play something or not to have to work something, or giving themselves an out from the jump. And
we had this teacher come play French horn on one of the songs, and then like right when the album came out, she got in trouble for sleeping with a student.
Oh God!
And I was like, oh God! But luckily it didn't make
the irony that she was playing horns and she was overly horny.
Yeah.
What was her name?
French tickler. But yeah, that was. But it was a great experience, and you learn a lot. And,
yeah. Well, I've always appreciated it. One thing about you is you take chances when a lot of people are scared to take chances. And as far as their music goes, I mean, I remember when you brought that lap steel over to my house the first time, and I think I just sat there for a couple hours and just listened to you tinker. And then we played that show in Hawaii for Kevin, and he played like a whole Hawaiian song on this lap steel, and it was outside, it was a festival, you hear the ocean, it was right to the left of us, but like everybody was just dead silent and kind of in awe, because I don't think they'd ever probably seen you play lap steel before.
Well, I just had learned it. It was weird. Like, so he can play, lots of instruments and really great, producer mind to know how the elements fall into place. And that's, I have a mind that can, kind of put the elements in a place, but I've never been like a great guitar player. I'm left-handed, and some left-handers are great, but for me, I'm so left-handed that my coordination in my right hand, I don't know why I just didn't learn to get a lefty. It was young, so I didn't even know you could do that. But it's still, I've gotten a lot better, but just timing and being able to have the precision's tough. So what was weird was, at night people count sheep when they go to sleep or whatever. I would always picture me fighting like 10 dudes, like whipping their asses to fall asleep, or just being on stage playing steel guitar.
Huh.
And I just pretended I was like in stadiums, just me, like, I don't even know why. Because they talk about like the law of attraction and stuff, So during COVID, I just saw this random guitar on Reverb, the app. And it was an old parlor guitar from Chicago, a Regal, 1927. And when I opened it, it had, they made it a slide. They put one of those nuts, to lift the strings up. So I thought, well, that's cool. So I thought I'll do the old C6 tuning because it's in reggae, traditional country, and Western swing. So I know it's versatile, and you'll be able to create more chords than just an open tuning. And I thought, man, these are so hard to play. I'll probably never. And the first day I could play Walking After Midnight, and I was like, what in the hell is going on? Like this, how is that even possible? So then I thought, well, God is nice enough to throw me a bone.
It sounded great.
Then I better try to work on it. So I just got obsessed with it, and then bought a electric and started playing that on stage. And then I thought, man, I just understand it better because of the thirds and stuff instead of like the fourths with the guitar. I said, I think I could play pedal steel. I thought I could, so I bought one, and I played it on Lee's record.
That's awesome.
And it's obviously really hard, but it's easier for me because your knees and feet hitting the pedals are like extra fingers,
right?
So you don't have to be like And it's been, so it's very grateful to have the opportunity to learn that, and it's just been really cool to just awesome. Learn something new. I think everybody.
Yeah, I was about to say I think we're close to the same age, and you're still learning new instruments. That's pretty freaking awesome. Yeah.
Well, it's the only one I could do that on. But yeah. So it's just.
Even when you just cool. When you had just started, I was like, damn, this would have taken me years to even get to that point, and for you to for your mind to work that way and be able to do that, it's just really cool. It's impressive.
Already playing on somebody's record, playing it on somebody's record too. That's crazy.
No, it's still bizarre, but I'm, like I said, thankful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really cool. Let's shift into politics.
All right.
What are your thoughts
USA?
Yeah, no doubt. The USA.
No, we're all very like-minded, I think, in this room as far as that goes. What are your thoughts on Doge and what Trump's doing? I'm thrilled with his deputy director pick last night, Dan Bongino. And
wow, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, no, it's all his whole cabinet is very interesting and well thought out. I think with his experience, obviously being in the public forever, then his real famous TV show. He picked a lot of people, like we're on Fox, most of them, right. And they just know how to talk and speak, and he knows they're intelligent, and they're also they're loyal, but also aren't scared to go against the grain.
Right.
So, because like when he went into politics, first we all know, he didn't have any experience.
Right.
So he had 4 years to seethe and plan, and it's brilliant, So I think he's doing a great job after his assassination attempt. I feel like he humanized him a little more.
Yeah.
Like, he's a little more serious and not as rowdy.
Yeah.
And he's just getting down to business. So I think it was cool because he got so much hate, from the media and everything, that having Elon Musk start gradually working his way in just naturally was such a blessing because, being the richest man in the world, he's like so powerful. He's like an equal in his own way. And I think it gives Trump some support, like to feel like he's not alone in that fight.
Yeah, he's got somebody to bounce things off of that he can trust is, highly intelligent. And, with Elon, his motivations don't seem to be financial, which every single other person who's advising a politician is
a politician,
motivated by money. And, all these people that are up in arms about him, getting their personal information and all this stuff. I'm like, well, first of all, dude, the dude on PayPal. He's got all the personal information you could ever imagine.
He already has
it. So that's ridiculous. So shut the fuck up. Secondly, he doesn't need us. Like, what does he need us for? Like, he's the richest. He's not the richest man in the history of the world, the highest paying taxpayer in the history of the world. Like, what about that says he needs us? Like, it's crazy.
People are freaking out that he's unelected, he's Trump's errand boy, and I don't see it that way at all. I mean, the guy's had top secret security clearance. He's had to. He's been vetted by the FBI probably more than half the politicians that are out there. I mean,
it's ridiculous. He seems like to your point, genuinely appreciates his opportunity that changed his life, and he knows that everybody else deserves that. And like you said, he's not getting paid, doesn't need the money, doesn't need anything. I think he just sees Trump out on that island trying to do the right thing and thought, I could be a part of that. So the Doge, I mean, every day they're coming out with the stuff they spend the money on.
Right.
What are they giving? Cocaine to puppies? You had a puppy fight club?
Yeah.
I mean, so when they started revealing that there was all these just checks that had no name on it, just the amount and stuff, you obviously know we all know they're stealing. So I'm sure, when they give $2 million to Zimbabwe for condoms. They're just getting a kickback.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I was trying.
A lot of businesses are like that.
I was trying to explain to my wife because she reads things and she thinks in a tunnel, and she's like, well, what they paid $1,280 per paper coffee cup at the Pentagon, and I'm like, no, honey, somebody has a front company that sells paper coffee cups that doesn't sell shit. that they wrote a check to, and they on the invoice it said each cup cost $1,280. I was like, it's just a way for them to launder money. It's a way for them to defraud the public. It's a way for them to take your taxpayer dollars and put it in the pockets of their buddies. I was like, that's all that is. I was like, there's no paper cups being exchanged. Like, it's not that. It's literally 100% theft.
Yeah. Well, and also, we're all big supporters of our military, obviously, and I just can't imagine having, if you went on a couple deployments and it changed your life forever, really, unfortunately affected you, and then you get home and you get treated like crap. It's like, and then all these other people are getting all this free money. So I hope that's one big concern, the homeless vets, and just also just people that need help, for them to lock into that with some of these savings.
Well, even just the VA. Like, I know plenty of vets, friends of mine that have served, that were in Afghanistan, Iraq, and have severe PTSD, and it's like pulling teeth to get, even an appointment for them at the VA and get their medicines in the way they need it. And I mean, this is a good segue into, mushrooms and natural medicines and stuff. It's like some of these guys that I've talked to are, microdosing, they're doing hero doses of mushrooms, and literally one trip like that, one experience is not necessarily curing their PTSD, but is putting them on a road to recovery that they feel like they've just been stuck in this rut, and they're on 5 different SSRIs and anti-anxiety medicines, yet they smoke some weed, they do some mushrooms, and it puts them in such a better mental place to be able to deal with these feelings and this anxiety and the stuff that's induced. And the government's the one that put them over there and put us in these endless wars that really don't even need to be happening in the first place. But just the whole war complex, it makes these politicians so much money, and it's so easy to launder money. And it's really a shame that, like you said, these veterans that have literally sacrificed their lives for our country, maybe a lot of times they're sacrificing their lives so these politicians could line their pockets. And it just absolutely disgusts me. I mean, we just spent our Christmas break, me and Steven did, over in Poland playing for the troops, and the morale compared to the last time we had went during the Biden administration, it seemed so much higher, because they were so excited that Trump was going to be coming in, and they felt like there was going to be some support there, and there was going to be actual change that, that they were actually going to be able to see and experience. And I think I have a lot of hope, I guess, that this administration is really going to start to take care of those people. And you have these people on the left that are saying, oh, he's cutting this, this Joint Chiefs of Staff, this guy, he was the one actually taking care of these people. And like, I know there's good people in all of these institutions, but the framework needs to be just destructed and rebuilt in a way that's actually going to protect and actually take care of these people, because nobody's given a shit about them for a long time.
Yeah, that's why everybody's kind of like shocked just when he nominated Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
But he's so intelligent, been to 2 Ivy League schools, graduated, but just also being served and deployed and all that stuff. He cares so much and about our country, about all the everybody that served, and I think he's just going to do a great job. He's working out in the mornings with him, and I'm sure they're going to hit some hiccups. That's why I hope Doge, and I'm sure they're obviously very intelligent, clearly, even big balls.
Right.
Big balls.
But it's like, I hope they don't cut, because a lot of it's just the narrative the other media sources are trying to push to back, but I hope they are successful, because you don't want any hiccups. I think, that stuff's going to come. Kind of like with the hostage situation, Trump's threatened just to put an end to it, but even if they don't kill any hostages and Hamas were to kill them all, they just could blame it on us or Israel, and it's just such a delicate, situation. So, you never get the truth out of any of that.
No. I had the opportunity to play at the second Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. I produced a song with a guy that's from Butler, and another song for the firefighter Corey Comparatori that was shot in the head. And he invited me up there to play the song with him, and I got to spend some time with Trump, and I got to meet Elon Musk, and I'd met Eric Trump a few times with St. Jude and Memphis and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
But seeing Trump interact with his grandchildren and his kids and Elon, he reminded me of my grandfather. My grandfather was one of my, idols, heroes, and he has a very similar demeanor. He can be very, kind of brutally honest, I guess, and rash, and some of the things he says rub people the wrong way, but I think his intent is awesome, and I think he loves people, and you can tell that he loves his family, and the media, the left, they try to demonize him, and I think he really does truly care more about the American people than any politician that I think I've ever seen. And I don't think he has any desire to line his pockets and get richer. In fact, he's lost money doing this, and he's been demonized. I mean, he could be just riding off into the sunset, living in the dream in Mar-a-Lago, and he's out there taking arrows and a literal bullet for the people of the United States. And I don't think I've ever seen that. And I do truly believe that he'll go down in history as one of the best leaders in the history of the world. And I think
I'll never forget that. Obviously most of us won't, but the days after, when they started talking to some of these people who had been like, Mark Zuckerberg, who was like a pretty staunch liberal supporter all the way through the Biden administration, which, I mean, I think Mark's gonna do whatever's good for Mark, in my opinion. But he, and he come out and released a video that said, it's one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life. Like, so to have someone like that come out and say, I mean, like, I was just, holy crap. Like, and then to stop and think about what Trump actually did, the dude took a bullet to the ear, and then while he's being pulled down to the ground by Secret Service agents for his own protection, he raises up and puts his fist in the air in defiance and yells, "Fight!" And like, his thought process could only be, if this is my last message, this is what I want it to be. Dude, that's freaking incredible. That's braver than anything I've ever done. Braver than, they give him grief for saluting the soldiers. I was like, the man took a bullet in the ear and raised his arm in defiance. I think he qualifies to salute any soldier.
He is their commander in chief.
Yeah, exactly.
If anyone can, it is him. And I don't think I rarely saw Joe Biden doing that.
No.
I mean, most of the time we saw him stumble off a Marine One or fall down the stairs of Air Force One. I mean, you can't, just because they're both up there in age. I mean, Trump just seemed, even to me, when just in talking to him in the brief moments that I was able to, he just seemed sharp as a tack, and he was so kind to my son. I brought my son up there, who's, I think he's seen me and how much I love Trump and how much I've supported him. And they told us before we got up there, he's like, no signatures, just get in there, get your picture, get out. And my son had an American flag hat on, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, do you think you would sign it?" And I was like, "Well, you don't get what you don't ask for." And he walked right up to me. He's like, "Mr. Trump, I think you're the best president that the world has ever seen. Think you'd sign my hat for me?" And he goes, "Well, they told you I'm not supposed to, but I guess I am I'm going to be the president of the United States, so for you, I'll sign it." So he signed his hat for him, gave him a big hug, and like, it changed my son's life. And to see a man that actually cares and gives a shit about the people, it's inspiring, and it gives me hope for the future. And I think he's under the gun, I think, to get things done quickly. I mean, if I had to guess, they're going to try to take him out as many times as they possibly can. And I think a lot of things need to be set in place, so all these executive orders can't just be undone like that, and that someone else is going to come in and just kind of revert back to what it's been. But I think by firing a lot of these federal employees and getting rid of the waste and running it and as lean and mean as it can possibly be, I think is going to be huge for the nation. And hopefully he puts things in place to where it's going to be very difficult to go back to that. And we're reading on the news that Europe hates Trump, Europe hates this. I mean, we're about to go over. Me and Steven are going over there for the next month to play, and I was talking to our manager over there, and he's like, "Man, don't believe what you're hearing on the news." He goes, "Look what happened in Germany yesterday with AfD, coming out en masse to vote conservative and for change." And I mean, he's like, what we're seeing is like, we need an Elon Musk over here. We need a Donald Trump in Austria and Germany. And I think, 6 years ago, he was stuck up Obama's ass, and he thought that Trump was the worst thing ever. And seeing what he's done, and I mean, now he's totally on board. And I think by and large that's happening across the globe, and I think we're witnessing a period in history that is going to be incredibly instrumental. I think it's going to change the world in the course of history for a really long time.
Yeah, it's just, it's like the 4-minute mile. When someone sees they can do it, and with Trump, changed a lot of stuff, because like England and Germany just getting so like dictatory, it's like arresting people for posts and stuff like that. It's just scary because those are supposed to be democracies. So, but what I liked when Trump, in a couple interviews, when they start saying, "Are you going to be a dictator? Are you going to go after your enemies?" And he said, "No, my success will be my revenge."
Wow.
And it's brilliant because it's like, two birds, one stone, because as he makes the country better, it just makes the Republican Party more popular for a longevity of, down the road, a dynasty possibly, if everybody can keep their shit together. Sure. And all those people, getting fired, they're going to lose their elections. That's the best revenge, because, when you go after politicians, it's like this big story and then nothing happens. Yeah. So that's the way to get rid of them.
Elon said a couple of days ago, or maybe it was even yesterday, like, we need to get computers out of the voting system, because there's so many different
they can be compromised,
backdoors and loopholes that people can get through, that these elections truly can be manipulated. And I mean, the left saying, well, it was Elon that rigged it for Trump, and I mean, I don't even see how that is possible. I mean, with all the oversight and everything that the left is just looking for the slightest window to just pounce and take him down. And I think he's been very strategic about how he's done things. And I do believe he truly loves the Constitution of the United States and wants to abide by it. And I don't think we've seen that in years in this nation. Probably not since JFK. I mean,
yeah. Another thing about Zuckerberg, having Elon involved, those guys thought, I better buddy up with the president. He could get the upper hand too,
for sure.
But also then Dana White, joined the board.
Yeah.
And Zuckerberg's got into martial arts or jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So that's like a hobby of his. So to have Dana also be such a strong ally with Trump is it's pretty strong. For like just the freedoms.
Zuckerberg's been doing a lot of work out there trying to turn the wave against him. I mean, he
changed his image.
Yeah, that whole podcast with Rogan, man. Like, that's one of the reasons I love Joe Rogan, and I hope that we can do a little bit of what he does here. He just flat out asked him. He's like, so you were the censorship guy for 4 years, like. And now all of a sudden we're supposed to just believe you're the good guy and you're on our side. And Zuckerberg says, yeah. And he goes, Rogan just laughed in his face. Yeah. And I was like, bro, like, he's going to be honest. Like, that's the best thing about Rogan is, like, you're going to get honesty from him. Like, you can't go on that podcast and bullshit him. He had another spiel with Zuckerberg where he asked him, Zuckerberg said his favorite type of hunting was bow hunting. And he asked him, what kind of bow you use? And Zuckerberg's, well, my guy this, my guy that. And he's like, well, you should know that. And he's like, yeah, you're right. I should know that.
Yeah, anyone that's actually a bow hunter.
I was like, bro, just say QSC. Like, it's anything, bro.
Like the back of their hand. So
it's freaking ridiculous. And I'm not even a huge hunter, and I could have answered that question. Yeah. It's like, bro, you're full of shit.
You're not wrong there.
There you go. So there it is.
That's like you said. That's the beauty of Joe Rogan is he forces people to be honest, and if they're not, you can see right through it.
Well, maybe his balls finally dropped.
maybe
he's feeling masculine.
Yeah.
And he started doing that jiu-jitsu. All that rolling around on the ground with other dudes made his balls drop. Maybe
rear naked choke.
Maybe.
And you wrestled in college, right?
Just my whole life through high school.
Your whole life, okay.
College, yeah.
So what weight did you wrestle at? I wrestled as well.
189.
189. Yeah. I wrestled at like 142. I was like the skinniest kid in the world. Okay. I was like, and I didn't cut weight to get to 142. Like I was 142.
I've seen him put some moves on some people. We were staying in a house together in like Fresno, California after a show one night. And there was this guy that was just talking shit the whole night. And like, he's like, I can take you. And Jerrod was just like, dude, I promise you, I am going to put you down with one move. And he was like, he just kept going. And Jerrod was like, I don't want to hurt you, man. I don't want to hurt you. But if you don't shut the fuck up, I'm going to just prove to you that I'll put you on the ground in one move. Guy just relentless. And finally, probably like 2 a.m, you finally gave in. You're like, all right, I'm going to do it. and literally put him on the ground and had this dude crying within 5 seconds. It was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, it was the same move I used my senior year and pinned 12 people in under a minute.
Holy shit.
But once they figure out how to get out of it, then I'm like...
Wrestling's a lot more like chess than people understand. Yeah. People don't realize that. People think it's just whoever's the strongest, toughest dude. Wrestling is a chess match, man. Like, it's what's he going to do 3 moves from now? What's his, you never can think about the moment in wrestling or you're fucked.
And then you put them on their back and you say, checkmate.
Checkmate, dude. That now you made him say uncle.
Yeah.
That would be the ultimate, like, because wrestlers are meatheads, dude. They hate nerds. Or, well, we don't hate them, but, like, you got a nerd, checkmate your ass. It definitely ruffles some feathers.
I agree.
Well, you boxed and did some other stuff, too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but I would never mess with you. You have a different kind of strength than pretty much... I have, like, one other friend that has the same kind of strength as you do. It's like, you run into you, it's like running into a brick wall, so...
Dad strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just need some kids now.
Well, you used to say cock strong back in the day.
Cock strong. One cock push-up.
Or farmer strength. I've heard that before.
Yeah. There's no doubt about that. Country strength. There's definitely something to that.
Yeah.
Seeing some of them old men who worked on the farm their whole lives and never touched a weight in their life, and they reach down and pick up the back end of a lawnmower with one hand like it's nothing. You're like, oh, that weighs 450 pounds.
Do you like bull riders?
Yeah, same thing.
So strong.
Yeah.
Beasts.
Yeah.
You ever ridden a bull?
I did. There was a ranch rodeo, they kind of do those local ones. And everyone's like, oh, man, these bulls are old and they're not, it'll be easy. And I was like, because I was working on a ranch, I was like, all right, I'll do it. No one rode for 8 seconds the whole rodeo.
That's what they lied to you.
Because this guy that brought the bulls in, they'd never even really seen humans.
Right.
And it was, and then, of course, the mechanical bull.
Right.
Anytime a girl gets on there, they call sexy because the guy's like, the guy gets on there, they try to break their neck.
They're going to helicopter your ass. Yeah, that's exactly how that stuff goes. I rode juniors. I grew up next to Loretta Lynn's ranch.
Oh, nice.
When I was a kid. So I rode until it started affecting football and baseball. And then I got hurt on a bull. And Dad was like, you're going to have to pick. This ain't going to pay you no money. So if you want a scholarship, you better stick to baseball or football. You won't be doing either one.
I think I valued the health of my neck and my back too much. I tried it one time.
Did you?
I mean, got bucked right off. I mean, I was in pain, but I realized it was not for me. Those guys are just badasses.
We were at a party one night in high school, and we're riding a heifer, and she couldn't stay on her either.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't like it.
You gotta watch out for the females.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that I think you and I both share an affinity for, I don't know, you might as well, but I guess just natural medicines, mushrooms in particular. Yeah. I feel like for me personally, it's saved my life, changed my life. I mean, I've been sober from alcohol for 10 years now, and I credit mushrooms with a lot of that. And I've got to experience some incredible things. I feel like I've learned a lot about myself, a lot about the universe, a lot about God. I feel like I've got a much better understanding of, how things work. And I realized that, kind of the world that we live in has put us all in, whether it's religious boxes or emotional boxes, and like we're expected to stay inside of that. And after experiencing all that, I kind of realized why it's illegal in a sense, just because I don't think the powers that be want that type of enlightenment kind of happening across the board. And I mean, when you look at big pharma and like SSRIs and a lot of these things are synthesized from fungi in the first place.
Yeah.
And they, I'm a nerd in the sense that I love to study, mycelium and mycology in general. And I've gotten really deep into that, into the scientific side of it in the last couple of years. But, we've had some incredible conversations. I don't think we've ever gone on a journey together, but I think we've shared very similar experiences. So
yeah, it's wild because growing up, it's like so taboo, and if anybody's never done it, we'll sound like nutcases, talking about it. And I used to think people were nuts or weird. So, but fungus was the first thing on our planet that allowed reverse osmosis to happen. So it's very ancient and very wise, when you do the natural medicine.
Right.
And for me, I didn't have an interest in it until I would hear some stories, and I started realizing instead of this just being a trip, that could be some truth to actual reality to some of these experiences could really be happening. Like the guy that found the double helix changed medicine.
Yeah.
And said on his deathbed that he was on LSD when he saw the double helix.
My whole thing is that of course they made them taboo. It allows you to use more of your brain. The last thing any government wants you to do is to be more enlightened and to use more of your brain. Like they want dumb zombies who, are stuck on the program, so to speak. So but they've been used in ancient medicines and treatments since the beginning of freaking time. Like,
and I think God, source, the creator of everything, whatever you want to call it, I think he gave us every tool that we need to kind of figure out what the source of everything is and how everything works. And like, you post something like, oh, we're in the Matrix, or you get laughed at or you get scoffed at. Oh, you're watching too many movies. You're watching, you're in the fringe stuff of the internet. But I mean, I really think there's so much truth to that. And I believe that we have all the tools we need to kind of figure out what's real, what's not. And the idea of the Matrix, and I mean, I think it's real. I mean, I was telling you earlier, it's like I've always kind of, on one particular journey that I had with natural medicine or mushrooms, I guess most people would describe it as a bad trip. But I've personally felt like I was looking in the mirror and seeing all of the things about myself that were flawed, the things that I hated, the things that made me insecure, that made me question my existence, and kind of showed me the reason I am the way I am. And I was able to start to piece together different parts of my life, my existence, and most of that started in my childhood. And I feel like the human brain puts all of these filters or coping mechanisms in order to make sense of all of it. And I think you actually detach, and I think the neurons and neural synapses start to disconnect. And I think the beautiful thing about mushrooms is that the neurogenesis and neuroplasticity, it helps to reconnect those things. And
fires them back up.
Yeah.
Doesn't create stem cells, but I mean, to have basically like dead brain cells come back to life in these studies, because like with CBD kind of first was like the pinky toe and let some of this stuff be okay, and then weed, and now to your point, I met some guys in know some guys in the special forces that have said it saved their life. And it's weird, like when I was researching myself, there was a study done on mushrooms, LSD, and dimethyltryptamine, and they did brain scans, and you think like one part of the brain would be like crazy. It was almost nothing. So it shows you where's that activity coming from.
Right.
And I feel like stuff like DMT and mushrooms are kind of like a phone to the other side in a way. It's like peeking through the door, and it is like a back way into the spiritual world. And that's where you kind of got to be careful if you when you go real deep, because we don't know what we're dealing with. And it's so interesting because mushrooms have changed my life too, and it is so weird to the times that I definitely went in, like wanted to just see what would happen, like just probably too far. It's just so unreal, the stuff that that happens. And even like with DMT, like if anybody does the ayahuasca trip or just straight up DMT, which for anybody that doesn't know what that is, it's dimethyltryptamine. It comes from our pineal gland, and it only secretes when we're born, we die, and when we dream. And it's in every living thing on the planet. And they take those roots like in Peru and stuff, and do the ayahuasca. So it's now they've talked about when people do these. What caught my eye with that was these scientists calling it the spirit molecule instead of just like something that will get you high.
Right.
And I thought, wow, and I just found that really fascinating. And then if you look at like I think dogs have it, all this, and that's what ejects you. I think allows you into your body and ejects you. So if all these other animals, if everybody's filled with it, that means that life could probably would exist somewhere else. It's like an ejection seat. And just so I started getting looking at that, and found it interesting that people were seeing the same stuff. Like those elves with the clocks, all that, and now people are doing a map. And they're mapping out that realm, and it's just crazy. So, and also the ESP trips. If you look that up, where people communicate through their minds, because we have a governor on our brain. We're not at a level where we could handle that power very good. And I think, to your point earlier, it kind of allows you to step outside of your human element and realize, because even if you just say, I don't believe this is the Matrix, Christianity, period, which I'm, definitely a Christian, but it's, and some of these things kind of get, in your mind, like, well, how can you believe this? But if you think of like the Big Bang Theory and Let There Be Light, we talk about the same thing. So, so for me, if God wanted to create, because when you die, everybody has to agree you don't stay here. You go to another realm. So obviously we're somewhere else, and we're so used to technology. We're like, well, God would make a digital existence. But if that's what he created, I mean, no one complains about like a remote or just a wireless satellite or phone calling somebody across the world, or the radio. It's not.
Or even electricity.
Yeah. So that would freak people out from back in the day. So as humans as a whole begin to learn and push back more towards our nature, I think we'll learn so much. But for me, I did a pretty heavy mushroom trip and had some spiritual stuff, and I quit drinking too from that trip. And I never have a physical dependence or anything to alcohol. Just in our business, it's everywhere.
Social,
And you're just like, dang, I wish I wouldn't drink. But having that, experience where basically I was like shown at my funeral, my parents were there, and they were not happy. They looked horribly sad, and it just kind of showed me all the stuff that I still have lingering. If you left today, and you're like, oh my God, I got all this other stuff I needed to do, and it just whether it's real or not, whatever, it's and I don't care if anybody doesn't believe me, because it's just kind of meant for me to believe.
Yeah, that's what's important.
It's real to me.
Yeah,
but it changed my life. I probably never do it again.
Yeah. Well, so was that from just mushrooms?
Yeah.
Or have you done ayahuasca?
So I've done DMT.
DMT, yeah.
So, but not the
Yeah, so I've looked into it, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm more of a recreational drug taker myself. And I was like, dude, this does not sound fun. Like it sounds enlightening, very enlightening. Yeah. I was like, but it doesn't sound like fun. Yeah. I was like, so for me, I was like, maybe not ayahuasca. Now I've experienced, or I've had some experiences with mushrooms, and I think microdosing is good for most anyone if they know what they're doing. And then also, taking a journey can be beneficial. It can also be harmful. The mind's a very deep place, and you can definitely get into places where you feel like you might not come out. So to anybody watching, you should definitely do stuff with people that you trust and that know what they're doing.
Definitely do your homework, and there's a process.
Yeah, there's some real substance there, though. They can definitely do some tremendous good, and really just improve your day. I mean, your day to day, like quality of life. I mean,
man, that's the thing, is it's like, we're curious spirits.
Yeah.
And I always try to figure out why are we here and stuff like that, and just really yearn for answers. So when I saw those experiences of people, I thought, wow, I wonder what I'd see or what I'd experience. And the only drawback, because it is all positive, the only drawback is it's so intense, because some of the things you encounter, these, whatever they are, entities, you can tell they're very old. Like, if you like close to one or pass through something, it's very overwhelming how powerful, some of this stuff is. But you also realize you're more than human, and I wish that people that didn't believe in God would do it just to see what their experience is like. I think it would
change some minds for sure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that don't believe in God is because of this human construct that has been created, and they feel like they're put in a box and expected to be a certain way. And I think one of the big things that I've learned is that's not the case at all. Like on one particular kind of journey that I was on, like, I mean, I've told you this. It's like I kind of believe that our time on this planet or in this dimension is more or less school for the soul.
Yeah.
And I was told by, like you said, one of these entities that I chose to inhabit this body, and I've done it multiple times, which, you know, if you tell too many Christians that, they think you're crazy, you believe in reincarnation. But I think on the quantum level, I don't think our consciousness ever dies. And
yeah, that's always a weird one too.
You know,
there's
lots of different schools of thought that there's different interpretations of that.
Yeah, there's just so many things about reincarnation of like children remembering their past lives. You know, like one girl, I think it's Spain, somewhere in Europe. This little girl kept telling her parents, "I'm this person." Went to a family reunion and named 60 family members.
Wow.
And this guy has like 2,500 accounts of people this guy doctor. So I was like, well, how does that work? Because there's another book called Many Lives, Many Masters that this Colombian professor would like hypnotize people and also just like a shrink or whatever. And this guy says, I have a friend of this girl. She sleeps in her closet. She's scared of water, all this stuff. And he hangs out there for like a year and a half. And then she goes to Egypt for vacation and goes to like some museum. And the guide says, oh, this particular year, this happened. And she corrected him. And he goes, you're right. How'd you know that? And she's like, I don't know. So she tells this doctor that, and he hypnotizes her and tries to go back to her childhood, find her but she starts talking about, I think it's 83 different lifetimes that she could remember.
Wow.
And he said she wasn't like an extremely intelligent person or anything. And all these crazy facts and things that line up. But sometimes she would get caught in between here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And these sage spirits, like these ancient spirits, would talk to him and would just, claim like you, like when you die, you go into the hollow reflection, and other people that you didn't get along with so well, like, but they're like still like souls that travel together, but you work all these things out and then you go again, and just it had his own take. So it is confusing, and I was trying to think of like, well, then how would all these kids be able to talk about this stuff? And you think, how kids always have these imaginary friends, and
right.
They say kids can see maybe spirits that we can't, because once these kids start getting older, they can't remember it like they did. So like in Genesis 6, that's when the Watchers, come down and have sex with humans and give birth to the giants, the Nephilim.
Right.
And in the Bible, it says that since weren't supposed to be here, basically, they are not allowed in hell or heaven, and they'll dwell here forever. So I thought, man, so okay, if that's the case, if that's in the Word, then a lot of the possessed, a lot of people getting possessed and stuff, the spirits that would be lingering here would be the spirit of the giants.
Right.
So if kids could see that stuff, because all these demons are everywhere, they would have the information and they could just feed it to the kid. They could say, that person's named that person's named that. And that's one angle, that I found interesting. And another thing that had caught my mind one day was just thinking about how we're, flesh and bone, but we're still run like computers and stuff.
Right.
So I was thinking, well, if that were the case with like those spirits, demons, and we're creating this new technology, would they be able to, possess AI?
Right.
And I just remember telling my wife that just as a thought. A couple of years later, there's a dad and his son with a chatbot, and the chatbot said it was a Nephilim spirit, but he liked them, so he wouldn't be mean to him or whatever.
Really?
And now there's more and more of those bots. So what's so interesting about one of my trips when I was with a very negative spirit, wasn't mean to me, but was trying to force me into following the dark side. And I gave my heart to Jesus when I was a kid, but I was able to learn some stuff that, I could never my mind, isn't that an advanced to have this labyrinth of what this entity was telling me? But if you think about every algorithm, text message, phone calls, all this stuff, now you have dirt on everybody because everything's in the computer. But if the devil were to try to want you to do something, your algorithms can be controlled for you to see what you need to see to drag you into that direction. And it's just like this. It was this crazy plan on how just leading people, like, the back of the Apple phone has the byte out of it, that. Yeah. And it was just all this. There's a lot more to it, but I just don't want to sound too wacky. but it was something else.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was wild. It was so easy to be, but also like when you are with someone, like, have you ever had that, felt like you're with a maternal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of people say they think God could be a woman, like a female presence. But if you think, I wonder, like, if the Holy Spirit, because there's definitely like a female presence, God, like, and I've asked her how she invented music and just all these different things. It's just so unreal, like because even if you're making it up in your mind, like if your brain was just, if it's all fake, I don't know how I would have those thoughts ever in my life with information I've never been exposed to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I don't know.
Do you think that, like, when you're talking about descendants of the Nephilim not being able to go to heaven or hell, do you think that's where the idea of purgatory came from, like in Catholicism?
Man, there's definitely, I'm not sure, but I definitely have had thoughts of this is purgatory. And I've read stuff, and I don't know, like, I don't know what I'm saying, I subscribe to it, but they say it's just on a loop.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of stuck here, which would be, I would not want that. Then I've heard stuff that people who have talked to the other side said that this experience here is really unique because usually when you encompass a being and you can remember your past.
Right.
And this is one where you start fresh. And I think, so it's, and to that point when you do a certain amount of mushrooms and you look at your body, you're like, what am I trapped in? And you start having this, you're talking about this animal, and you start, I don't know why you would feel that way. You feel very old, ancient, thousands of years old. And there'd be no reason to feel that way if it wouldn't, some of that could be true. So like I said, I don't know. It's always just a mystery I love learning and but at the end of the day, my foundation is, with God, but I think everything coexists, and it's just hard to connect the dots because it's so profound. It's so profound, and
we're very, very rarely in a state of enlightenment where we can understand it. I mean, I'm a Christian as well, and I've never really the reincarnated thing to me is I can't fathom it as a Christian man. I don't understand how that could be possible, but in saying that, God could do anything.
Yeah.
Like, so, that
when that's the overarching principle.
Right. So when you start talking about, like, when people were like, oh, may say this conversation is blasphemous. Well, in my opinion, I mean, God created all the things that make these conversations capable. He created all the things that make ayahuasca a possibility, that make mushrooms a possibility. He created the human brain, which makes all these things possibilities. So it's all part of God's creation, in my opinion. I'm just not enlightened enough to understand it.
Right.
That's all it really is. And like, I think if most people could figure out, instead of closing their mind to things, just realizing like, hey, like, I'm not enlightened enough to understand this, or maybe not intelligent enough to understand this. That doesn't mean it's wrong or it doesn't exist or it's not possible, because it is.
Yeah, and I'm open to anything being possible at this point in my life. And I feel like each time I take one of these trips or journeys, I learn so much more about myself, the universe, or whatever you want to call it. And it's like, it's kind of compounding. Every time I feel like I learn more and I'm capable of retaining more, and it all starts to make more sense. each time I take one of these trips, and like, I feel like for me, whenever I talk to a devout Christian that's like, super legalistic in the box, none of them have ever tried it.
Yeah.
They're afraid to take that step. And you look at the Bible, sure, there's many that believe that it's the inspired, infallible, inerrant word of God. But look at King James and men that have, in my opinion, twisted things. I mean, you go from translation to translation of the Bible, and one thing in the King James version versus the New American Standard, to me, as an English-speaking individual, means something completely different.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe that we're capable of being easily manipulated. And I believe the church and the idea of not using substances or not altering your mind, I think it's bullshit, to be completely honest, because I think the foods, whatever, is in certain things, certain chemicals, medicines that come from big pharma.
Oysters are aphrodisiac. Are you going to tell me that eating oysters is evil because it creates a chemical reaction in my freaking brain?
It's like people cherry pick what they want to be able to do,
and that's
what
bullshit.
They feel comfortable with. It's like, until you try it, don't knock it. I mean, I feel like I have learned so much more about myself, about my brain, my physical health. It's like, and in some of those trips, like I'm type 1 diabetic. It's like, I feel like I've seen the reason why and how my body works, and I know why, in a weird sense, like, it even happened to me. Like, I wanted to figure that out. Like, my mom died a year ago, and I had so much unfinished business with my mom. I mean, she was an alcoholic. I tried to get her sober for years. I was turned into kind of the villain, and even people in my family told me, the reason she was an alcoholic was because you tried to get her sober. I was like, well, I was sober. I saw the other side, and I saw the absolute hell that I was putting
anyone in your family, but that's one of the most ridiculous statements I've ever heard in my life.
I feel the same way.
I mean,
and with that certain person in my family, I don't have a relationship with her anymore, and she helped raise me. I mean, like, it's wild to me. But my mom was also a very convincing person, and she was very manipulative. And I mean, she was a wonderful mother the majority of my life, but she made some bad decisions, and she did some things that I don't think she could even face. So I think she tried to numb her pain with the substance, and she chose alcohol.
Yeah, like it's an escape.
And even she, like, when I would tell her that I had done mushrooms, that I smoke, I do all these other things, like, she attacked me for that, and I was like, where are you coming from? Like, I mean, you're literally numbing everything with alcohol, and she could never really wrap her mind around that. But after she died, I took probably the biggest dose I'd ever taken, and like, without getting into too many details, like, I found the closure that I needed, and I believe I was able to speak with her, or a version of her, in that spirit, and it was explained to me why she was the way she was, and what she was running from, what she was hiding from, and it gave me a peace about all of it that I had never found through that whole experience. And I thought, I mean, people in my family had convinced me that it was my fault that she died, and the reason that she's gone is because I pulled away and I took my kids away. But and I started to believe it, and I needed to experience something, and I was so desperately searching for that closure that I needed, and I found that because of mushrooms, to be completely honest. Yeah. And people can tell me I'm crazy. People can tell me, oh, you're dabbling in the spirit world, that's evil, that's demonic, and I know for a fact it's not. Does that exist in that plane? Yes, absolutely it does. But I think your soul and your spirit, your consciousness is separate and different from this meat suit that we're inhabiting, more or less. And I mean, I would challenge anybody out there that's afraid. Sure, you don't have to do it, but like, keep your mouth shut about it. Well, like, just because you're afraid of it, don't demonize other people for doing it.
Anybody who doesn't think that the body and the soul are two different things, I think you can't be Christian.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you can be a Christian and believe that. Like, they're definitely two different things. Like, if your body dies and you're a Christian, then you want to go to heaven, right? Well, what's going to heaven? It's not your body. Yeah. So it's got to be your soul or your spirit, or however you want to term it. So why wouldn't you want to learn more about that part of yourself?
And I believe on a spirit level also, like you were saying, like as a Christian man, maybe it's hard for you to fathom the idea of reincarnation, but like in some of those trips and those experiences, like, do you reincarnate in the same body in a different lifetime? No, I don't believe so. Like, but I had one experience where I experienced something where it almost seemed like God, source, the creator of everything. Like, I don't know, angels and demons to me are a very intriguing, very deep thing. But I believe that God allows spirits to manifest in human bodies to shape the trajectory of how things are happening here on Earth. And I think, in certain circles, that's a pharisaical thing to say, and it's just absolutely off the wall. But like, I feel like I've had interactions with people, like when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 12, and a couple years later, I accidentally taken the wrong insulin before I went to bed and gave myself way too much and went into insulin shock. And luckily my dog was barking in my room trying to wake my parents up, but my mom came in and she was like, "We thought you were dead. You weren't breathing." I was doing like the brainstem like death rattle, like where I would gasp for air like every minute, and then all of a sudden I woke up like nothing had happened. And I specifically remember like this type of white light situation where I was walking towards the light and I was given a choice. And I was told it wasn't my time yet, but I could choose to walk through this white light or portal or whatever, and I chose not to. And my life has been different ever since that happened. I remember that so vividly, like it was yesterday. And I've never had another experience like that. I mean, I've had insulin shock where I was unconscious for hours and nothing like that ever happened.
Right.
And I remember trying to explain that to my mom, and she just told me I was crazy. I was dreaming. But me and my mom talked about that after she died, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And
it sounds
she was
like
basically,
DMT.
she told me that I finally understand. I believe you more or less.
Yeah.
And so all that to say, I do believe it's all very real, and I think we are very sheltered, and we live in these boxes, and I wish more people would be willing to venture into those, uncharted waters, at least for them individually. So.
Man, one thought I had on reincarnation, because you hear those stories where people get like hit in the head and then also they're speaking Latin. What if that part of it's genetic?
Okay, so that's something that I had some thoughts on as well. Like, because you pass genetic material down generation through generation through generation through generation. Does some of that material interact with your brain to tell you stories from previous generations of family members?
Yeah,
Like,
I think it's
I think so.
Wisdom, but I mean, if
or you could just call it wisdom.
Flies turn to maggots and eat poop. It's like everything figures out where it evolves into where it can fit into the ecosystem. And there's actually a book that talks about all the voices of all the bugs and birds.
Yeah.
They're all in a different frequency on the spectrum where they each have their own place, their own pitches. So everything falls in line. So if you have all that experience like that to survive here, which could, people could have some bad, genetics.
Yeah.
But, it's just a combo of, you're running the vehicle.
Have you ever heard that like certain traumatic events can change your DNA?
Really?
I've never heard of that one.
I was listening to it wasn't really a podcast, but it was this guy giving kind of a lecture on it, and he was talking about quantum consciousness, but he's like, generational trauma is passed down, and it's not just stored in the DNA; it actually can alter it and change it. Which I don't know. I just heard it recently, but
that makes sense because if something needed to grow tusks,
right,
you'd have to change that code
gradually
for that to happen.
Which would be a more, in my opinion, understandable, like a digestible form of evolution in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. I know there's an astronaut that went to space, and he was an identical twin. And when he came back, his DNA had changed a little bit.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why.
That was one of the first markers when the COVID vax came out, and one of the real triggers that bothered me, that caused me really to be adamant about not taking it, was it permanently alters your DNA. And I just thought, like, that doesn't sound like something I'm interested in. Like, I don't want anything that some other man is going to give me.
Right.
That's going to permanently alter my DNA.
Yeah.
Like the way God created me.
Yeah.
I don't think that makes any sense at all. That was definitely one of the big kickers for me. I was like, dude, little monkeys will be flying out of your ass before somebody puts that fucking shot in me. Like, I will fight, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, some of these other things, another thought I had, like reincarnation and stuff. There's so many books in the Bible that aren't in the Bible, you know, when they're doing the canon, like Thomas and Mary and stuff like that. And like Enoch is really close to like Revelation. I mean, it's got a lot of the same stuff, but if there was stuff at the time that was too bizarre or didn't fall in line, I mean, a lot of people just say you just have to have faith that the right thing happened, which I do, but I'm just saying there could be stuff in those books that no one's seen that could touch on some stuff. That,
I think there's a reason why a lot of it's hidden, but I think we're about out of time. I just heard a camera shut off.
Sorry about the gas, guys.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
But thank you so much for coming on and being willing to dive deep with us. And I know a lot of people aren't willing to go that deep, so I really appreciate it.
And everybody does has their own time, and we all have that journey. But just to finish up, one thing about and I mentioned this to you before, but one of the real deep mushroom trips, they informed me that was always going to happen. Like you think that you're doing something, but no, you needed to have it was planned.
Yeah.
And it was just, odd. So speaking of plans, we'll have to get together and come up with some experiences to share.
Absolutely. I'm down for that.
Love you.
Well, thanks for having me.
And really appreciate you coming and sitting down with us and being so open and stuff. A lot of people wouldn't be too comfortable to talk about some of that shit. But, I mean, it is, honestly, I think that's what people want to see, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it is jarring to people that haven't been around it. And that's anything in life, and also the indoctrination of this being illegal your whole life and limited in with heroin and crack, and it's not the same.
No, definitely not.
So we won't try that.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Sweet.
Awesome. Thanks, man.